with data storage and with the way things are going now with logistics hubs and data storage, it's a huge market. It's only going to grow. I can see that shopping centres and the traditional high streets sort of struggling, and it's because it's all moving to sort of online. So anything that supports that move, especially within real estate, is going to be where things head.
Yeah. Welcome to the Property Funder podcast. I'm your host, Michael Dean. You can find me on the internet at property_funder. I'm here with my friend Ashley Hammond. Ashley is a director at Academy Consulting, and it's good to see you here. Good to welcome you.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Yeah, everything good with you?
Yeah, it's good. It's a nice place to be at Academy.
Yeah. And Ashley, you and I, we've known each other a long time.
We have.
We've done a few deals together over the years. I think it's over 10 years we've known each other. Coming up to now
50, almost 15, I think.
Possibly, yeah. Is it that much?
I think so. I think we're one of your first deals.
Well, that's certainly true. Yeah. We did. I think we did the deal. Charlotte Street deal. We can touch on that at some point. But yeah, we did the Charlotte Street deal, and that's a good 10 years ago now. So very good fun, good fun times. Definitely felt like the Wild West for us at the time. Actually, you've built a career around working with high net worth individuals and family offices. How does one go about gaining the trust of these family offices and high net worth individuals, and how do you secure business from them?
Mine happened almost by accident, word of mouth. I started working for a friend's family office, and it happened to be a large one. So he referred me to his friends, and people heard what I was doing, and estate agents that were working with me on managing that family office sort of saw what I was doing and said, okay, we've got a client who's in a very similar situation to your client. Would you mind giving them a hand? And that was basically how it started, from luck and then from tenacity, just working hard and being honest. And it was just one referral to the next, without any marketing and without really trying to do it as an objective, you know?
Yeah. And where do you think the mistakes are made by people who want to work with high net worths and family offices? Because no doubt you've seen plenty of those.
It's in the service you offer, and every family office is different and every person is different. So some might require a lot more hand-holding. They might come to you sort of green, never having dealt with real estate before, having inherited some money, or earned money quickly, and say, how do I go around this? And you have to sort of put the structure together, refer them to a whole team to manage what's going on and make sure they're in good hands. And others come to you where they're in a family office and you're speaking to their family office manager, never even meet the client. And then you just have to be ultra efficient. You have to be professionally reporting and brutally honest, where if it's a no, it's a no. And if it's not possible, or if they're being sort of misled by other advisors, you tell them quickly. Sorry, but this isn't possible. I know you think it is, but it's not. So I'd say that's where a lot of mistakes are made, is by sort of over-promising clients to get them on board is where a lot of mistakes are made.
Yeah. There was certainly at the beginning of my time in the specialist finance space a misconception around family offices being dumb or stupid. And my experience of that was the complete opposite. And I'll put some context around it. So before we set up Avamore, I was doing some capital raising for some property developers on the side. And I talked to some of my kind of private equity real estate or institutional contacts, and they go, oh, no, the returns here, they're not for us, they're too skinny. Why don't you go and talk to a family office about this? Why don't you do this for the family office? Turns out my experience of family offices were that they were far more exacting and far more demanding than any private equity or institutional investor might be. But what's been your experience with family offices around being demanding in their return requirements?
the family offices I've worked with sort of tend to have lifestyle objectives as opposed to money objectives. So a lot of them have, in my experience, been earning their money elsewhere with much higher returns. And so they can't, if you try to compare returns on real estate against returns they're making in business, you would fail. And so they just want to know that it washes its face, that it's industry standard, that the returns you're offering them are industry standard, and they're fully aware of what industry standard is. So depending on where they're investing, if it's London, they'll expect a lower yield. If it's outside of London, a higher yield. Build costs, they'll know what build costs are, and they won't want to pay above the market just because they're known to have money.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the funds I've managed or the families I've worked for haven't been investing in real estate as a way to make their money. They've already got their money. And so it's just a way to sort of hold wealth, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. That's that makes a lot of sense to me. And I guess that being part of the sort of family office network, certainly real estate is just one component of most families' investment activities, and the vast majority of their wealth is held outside of real estate. Yes. Let's talk about Academy. So how did you get into how did you come into the Academy setup? And can you maybe speak briefly to the evolution of your career as to how you got there?
So Academy, they're a consultancy based in Sevenoaks that consult on cost consulting and project management. They do large industrial projects, ultra high-end real estate projects, and a very capable team. Mike Bull and Ben Herridge, they're fantastic quantity surveyors. Mandy Wheeler's a project manager. She's a wealth of knowledge. So what I noticed when I was looking at restructuring when I get a family office or when I get a finance request is that you normally have to take it back to bones. You have to look at it and go, what's the reality? Because I'm being told this by a value or being told this by a client. But is that true? Is the value really here? Is the build cost really this? Is it going to take this long? And normally the answer to all those three questions is no. And you have to rework the timeline, rework the build cost, rework the valuation, speak to local agents and understand really what it's going to go for and what the timelines of sales are. Understand what the values are going to come in at, because the valuations on bank loans are different to commercial valuations. So you've got to really understand the nuts and bolts of what you're dealing with. And I've been dealing mainly with high-end resi, and it's relatively stable and sort of not cookie cutter, but you can use the same model over and over again. But when you want to go beyond that into sort of industrial or into larger schemes, then it becomes a whole new scheme. And I don't have the capacity to analyze the project management on those and analyze the costing on those without having external advice. So I spoke to Academy and said, could I offer my services to you, or could you offer your services to me, or how can we work together? And Academy said, we'd love to have finance in-house because we've got loads of deals that need unlocking before our clients can build. So if you come in, you can unlock this deal for us. We can then sort of project manage it and get it over the line, and vice versa. If you've got a client who it needs looking at, we can look at the cost consulting for free and the project management and hopefully get it over the line for you. So it felt like a very natural evolution of my career. And that if I wanted to grow, I knew I needed a network behind me that could analyze those complex projects.
And so was this spurred by the fact that your clients, particularly the high net worths, were increasingly moving into the industrial space, and that was a sector that you, because you didn't have, it wasn't high end resi, which is I guess your kind of traditional comfort zone, you needed their expertise, and so the Academy guys, it sounds like the Academy guys and yourself had some very natural synergies, and that's where the sort of partnership, the collaboration came from.
Yeah, that, and also not that I've exhausted my network, but I wanted to expand into a new business area, and industrial seemed like the place to go. I can see it's got fantastic returns at the moment. There's a lot of development happening, really good operators, and so it's something I wanted to sort of get my teeth into. Yeah, and I wouldn't have been capable of doing it without the backing of Academy. So those people who say that industrial is just some concrete
and some steel and some aluminium. They've got that wrong, have they?
I think so. I mean, it's with data storage and with the way things are going now with logistics hubs and data storage, it's a huge market. It's only going to grow. I can see that shopping centres and the traditional high streets sort of struggling, and it's because it's all moving to sort of online. So anything that supports that move, especially within real estate, is going to be where things head.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned data. Are you specifically referring to like the construction of data centres as well?
Exactly, yeah.
And is that something that you're actually involved in?
Yes.
Are you actually involved in some projects like that at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, I think 3 of Academy's large consultants are involved in data centres. I had a meeting on last Monday with a large investor who's got a huge fund. I think they've got a fund from UBS for life sciences. It's, I think it's 250 million they've got available, or 250 billion or something stupid.
Right.
just silly numbers available to spend on the life sciences. They looked at spending it there, bought some sites, and now they're converting half of them into data centres.
Fascinating. For those of us who don't know, what is it? What's a typical data center development site look like? How many hectares or acres is it? What is it? And then roughly speaking, how much does it cost to? How long and how much does it cost to build?
I mean, it really depends. You can get a data center from sort of 30 million up to sort of hundreds of millions, and the sizes vary the same way the price varies. The main thing is the connection to the grid, the ability for cooling, local planning regulations. So the main thing is the constrictions on the site.
Yeah.
As opposed to the size.
What's the smallest site though that you could put a data center on?
I would say about 30 million is sort of your entrance to market.
But in terms of physical size?
Physical size, I'm not sure. I don't get it. It's not really not my size of it.
Okay. Yeah, because I can imagine there's a lot of people sitting on plots right now, wondering what they could do with it, and maybe historically they were hoping to get maybe some housing on there or something like that. But particularly if they've got with the cooling, is that how do they go about cooling the data centers?
It's nearly always water cooled.
Yeah.
Or
so access to a body of water, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But it's a complex marketplace, and one that I'm sort of starting to learn.
Yeah. And again, it's just driven by essentially client demand.
Driven by, client demand, but also a niche in the market. You see that residents at the moment, sort of luxury residences, are taking a bit of a hit. People are being a bit more cautious, whereas data centers are moving. So you've got to sort of give yourself a chance to do business. And while one market constricts a little bit, if another's moving quickly, you can sort of tap into it a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it sounds like though, with I guess with the constraints of a data center site, there's only going to be so many that you can build, and also because you need the power, the grid connection, or the access to the power, and also the access to access to the water, by the sounds of it, and then you've also got to have a compliant local authority. So so it's probably it's probably not going to be every landowner in the country is going to be trying to do it just yet.
And the people that source the sites for data centers are sort of specialists. And so if they haven't found it themselves, it's relatively unlikely that you're going to have it. Yeah, it's unlikely you're going to have it and sort of not know.
No. Well, quite. Although I'm sure there's a few people trying to get into the space to learn how to get into it, but I guess that's just fads, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of the high-end resi market, obviously there's been a bit of turbulence. I mean, we're at the time of recording, we're in the middle of March, so there's some interesting things going on in the Middle East. Not for a change, of course.
Yes.
But do you think that that obviously there's been a bit of a lot of chatter about an exodus to Dubai of high net worths from the UK. I guess a lot of those people are currently coming back to the UK for some safe harbour, and presumably there's some people in the Middle East as well who are natives of those countries who are also potentially looking for, should we say, more I say politically stable, but perhaps more kinetically stable, shall we say, locations. Do you think that there might be a resurgence of for prime markets like the prime central London market that you're obviously very familiar with?
Almost certainly. I mean, I've had 2 calls this weekend from clients that had just relocated to Dubai maybe 2 or 3 years ago, who are now saying, we're coming back to England. Our kids are going to school here. We don't want them to go to school in Dubai anymore. How can we put our kids to school here without being liable for tax ourselves? How can we spend more time in the UK? How can we sort of operate more as a UK resident again without incurring the taxes?
Yeah.
2 phone calls this weekend.
Just on the weekend?
Just on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So
you're expecting your phone to light up, your phone to be lighting up all through the week then?
Well, I don't know how many phone calls I'm going to get, but just the fact that there was 2 this weekend for the same reason, and wealthy families feeling at risk and saying, we're back in the UK and we're actually not going to go back to the Middle East for a while.
And are these families who have connections with the Middle East naturally, or is it just somewhere that they've just decided to kind of emigrate to a couple of years ago and now?
Exactly.
And now coming back.
Not normally UK citizens, not normally born in the UK. Not one of them's Turkish and the other one's Iranian origin, but they considered England their home for a long time, and then only moved when they sort of felt like they had to sort of keep their wealth. Yeah, to preserve it.
And so what are they asking you to do? They ask you to source a project. They ask you to source or just a broader kind of advisory.
Broader advisory. I mean, it's out of my realm, but they're asking me to refer them to people that can help them with structuring the tax or structuring the residence. So if I had to reach out to my network and say, could you help? Could you help this family move? Could you help this family sort of achieve their goals?
Yeah, that's kind of typical of the family office. That family office in high net worth world, isn't it? That you typically have you specialise in one thing, but then you have this broad referral network of people that you refer business onto.
It's very typical.
Yeah,
it's very much referral based. So I know that I'll refer to a couple of guys to help with tax or to help with relocation or passports or whatever. And I know that if they have a client who needs to refurbish a large house they've got here, they'll come to me for the structuring of the finance, organising the construction team, and setting up the contracts. So it's.
And how do you think that's going to impact the prime central London market, do you think that has a possibility of kickstarting the broader London housing market, which has been a little bit subdued over the last 2 or 3 years?
I think the broader housing market is a different kettle of fish. I think there are sort of some underlying issues there that are much more difficult to fix. Mm-hmm. Supply and all sorts of things, mortgages. But I think with ultra high net worths, I think there'll be a kickstart where people will say, actually we're coming back for a bit.
Yeah.
And they won't, the tax kick that I have to pay, they might just bite the bullet. They might just go, okay, fine, we have to pay it in order to feel safe. In order to the
reason they tax, you mean like as in they have to live here more than whatever 180 days a year?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
It's quite interesting because I'm not saying you're wrong about the wider London market, but it certainly felt like we're both of a similar vintage. But it felt, if you cast your mind back to sort of 2011, 2012, I think the crisis in Syria was a bit of a kind of started a bit of a domino effect of high net worths buying into the prime central London market, and that tended to have that kind of ripple effect that then drove,
That's true.
So someone buys in Mayfair or buys in Belgravia, the person who would ordinarily be buying in Belgravia or Mayfair then has to go to, I don't know, Marylebone or Chelsea. The person who's in Chelsea goes to the person who would buy in Chelsea has to buy in Fulham because they can't afford to buy in Chelsea anymore. The Fulham person ends up in Putney and so on and so forth, and has that sort of rippling effect. Certainly in the West London market and North London market. And I'm just curious as to whether you think that will happen again.
I don't think so. I'd like it to, but I don't think so.
Why is it different this time?
Well, because the market already expanded. So the market expanded, and then we had an exodus of ultra high net worths where they sort of ran away all at the same time, and it created a slump in the market where people just held or sort of sold. And this is just going to be reinflating it. I think I would be surprised if it went beyond original levels. Maybe it will, if the conflict persists. Then perhaps. But if the conflict is short lived, or just I think it'll just be the fickle who. Do you not think that and I'm not talking down these Middle Eastern markets, because personally I still think that they have a robustness to them. Yes.
That will endure. But do you not think for the short to medium term that there's the sort of the brand image of a lot of these Middle Eastern relocation destinations is going to be quite severely impacted, and so as a consequence of that, these sort of more mature prime markets are going to be beneficiaries of that?
I do think that, but I'm not sure to what extent. I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how damaged the markets were over the last year to begin with. So I think getting back to zero, okay, easy. Moving beyond that, beyond where things were, the lofty prices we had before. Yeah, I'm not sure how long that will take.
I mean, I don't know. I think most prime central London estate agents would take anything that looks like an improvement right now, and I think they'd be less concerned. They're probably more concerned about activity than they are price growth, and I suppose that would be the kickstart for things, right? Even before
things kicked off in the Middle East, we had a developer work with Brahma who had finished something in 9 Mount Row, and they got an incredibly high price per square foot right before they had 3 competing bids on it. And so I could feel then, before January, end of December, that there was something happening in the marketplace, that there were people looking and competing on prime assets. Like if the asset was good enough, people were competing on it.
Interesting.
So that was interesting for me, because I thought I was hearing different things, but in reality what I was experiencing was competition on good assets.
So was it quality that was driving the competition, or was it pricing, or a combination of the two?
It was going for a high price, so it wasn't pricing, it was quality. The developer had made an exceptional finish. He'd bought a good asset in a good location, understood what people wanted, and he had competition on it. Good marketing, I think, as well.
That makes all the difference. In terms of, and presumably you're still, despite your recent forays into the industrial and data space, you're still, the bread and butter is presumably still
very
high-end prime.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. What do you think are the key differences between a successful prime renovation or development project and one that struggles to attract the attention and, crucially, pricing that the developer expects?
Understanding the end user, understanding who's going to be their market, and the broadest appeal, which is difficult because each area is specific. So the most successful developers I've seen have developed a different product for every location they develop in. If they develop something in Weymouth Street or in Marylebone, it'll be to one sort of look, one aesthetic. Yeah. And if it's in Mayfair, another. They won't have sort of what people consider to be like a signature style. And these developers have a signature style, I think, sort of now are sort of missing the mark a bit.
Okay. Because I guess that there's always there's a phrase that comes into my mind, which is when you try to please everyone, you please no one. So you always worry that I can kind of have some sympathy with those developers who have a signature style, because presumably they say, well, I've got my style, and because you only need to sell it once.
Of course, it's
okay to be kind of Marmite, love it or hate it, because the people who love it really love it. Whereas if you're kind of a bit beige, for want of a better expression, especially when you're going high end, do you not run the risk of like, well, no, it's like, yeah, it's okay, but I don't love it, kind of thing.
Well, it's almost like luxury brands, I suppose, where you've got Quiet Luxury would be a brand that doesn't have obvious branding on it, which is this sort of approach that I'm talking about, where every design, every house is its own entity. And where you have sort of a school of aesthetics, your own in-house style, That's more of a shouting, this was designed by whoever, this was designed by this person, look at, I can afford this interior designer. And it's very much sort of a status symbol. I think that way of behaving has passed a bit. It's not fashionable at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that for many of our audience, we're talking about a marketplace that perhaps doesn't, these are types of products that don't necessarily, I wouldn't be living or buying places like this either. But however, we have financed these types of assets historically, so it's still important. And I'm sure the specialist finance brokers who are tuning in will also have an appreciation for the fact that these things are absolutely crucial for the things that we finance or we facilitate the finance of. And just because we're not going to be the end users of them doesn't mean that they're not relevant and we shouldn't be,
of course,
shouldn't be taking advantage of them. In terms of the financing, which obviously you facilitate, what are for these types of high end projects? What are the key considerations that you have when you present these projects to funders for their approval, and what are the sort of different approaches you have to take to a standard refurb construction project from a financing perspective?
Because you're asking people to spend a lot more money on a single asset, the risk is higher for the lender. So you've got to show it that you respect and sort of make sure that the figures you're putting forwards you agree with, not just, you can't just say this is what the client's told me and hope it goes through. You have to actually take the time to analyse the GDV, analyse the build cost, analyse the current value, all these things you have to take the time to sort of rubber stamp yourself. So that's the first port of call. And then once you sort of understand what it's worth, you need to make sure that the client is sort of presented in a true fashion, risks and rewards. And when you're approaching a lender for it, but there are very different sort of lenders, and you know which clients will fit roughly which lenders, who has the appetite for what, and which personalities will get on well. And a lot of it is sort of, will this BDM, will this developer, whoever, like this client? Will they see their vision? Will they get along with each other? Will there be a fallout down the line? Do their processes match? And so you've got to also check that their processes of lending, like their drawdown structure, their monitoring structure, they all match with the client's expectations of how the build's going to happen.
Yeah. Where have you seen those client relationships with the lenders kind of go slightly awry or astray?
Awry a few times. They're probably the most memorable. Are you asking where I've seen it go wrong in sort of a... I suppose maybe we can answer the question in two parts, which is where have you seen problems and how have you gone, what steps have you taken for future cases to help avoid those pitfalls? I think in the early days when I was first working with you guys, a lot of lenders were sort of just giving cash out up front without monitoring QSs, just hoping the client did the right thing. And that went wrong a few times. And so I think the lenders learned to give it out in tranches, make sure you had decent MQSs on board. And for myself, I've learned sort of not, when I'm structuring the drawdowns or structuring how capital's released, to be much more careful about how quickly the money comes out, how the money comes out and where it goes. Yeah. Because if you put it into a client's account who's used to having funds available, they might spend the funds on whatever they feel like. So that's a difficult thing to get around without taking control of a client's money, because you've got to respect that it's their money, it's their wishes, and you can't really tell them what to do with it. So structuring that in a way that protects the client from themselves can sometimes be quite tough.
Well, I think we can have some fun talking about one particular client in question. But
potentially.
But we kind of, before we touch on that, have you changed your approach in terms of being more selective about which clients you take on, in the sense that you can have more of a repeat nature of client, as opposed to, again, thinking about the one client in mind, almost one with a bit of a death wish?
I tend to think I'm quite selective with clients to begin with. I mean, even that client at the beginning was decent. You know, he was a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Right. Yeah.
But even I try to be selective always. You just can't always predict how somebody's going to turn out or how their behaviour is going to turn. Sometimes their life just, you know, implodes on them.
Yeah.
And you can't predict how they're going to behave when that happens. So.
And it's just, I mean, then they just start to unravel.
Yeah.
Obviously, the client we worked with that first deal, you know, incredible house in a prime West End location. Client had inherited it from his father. Father was a highly successful artist, and you know, I think the client had a bank of paintings of his father's paintings.
Yes,
he used his father's paintings as like an ATM every time he wanted a bit of cash, and then when the paintings ran out, he used this townhouse as an ATM as well.
Pretty much,
and. With predictable outcome.
Well, I think I'm not sure whether you lent on the first. I think it got developed once before you guys stepped in. So he had inherited the property. It was worth not very much, and then we refurbished it and got a new valuation. It had sort of gone up by double the value, and he thought, this is a license to print money. And he said, "Can we do it again?" And I said, "Yeah. Well, actually, I think there's an opportunity to split it into flats and have this wonderful development."
That's right. I remember they were trying to get planning, weren't they?
And we had fantastic architects and a brilliant team. And I thought, you know, okay, we have a real opportunity to do something wonderful. And because of his name, I thought this could be something special. And so we drew down more money to pay the deposit for the next phase of development. And at that point in time, which I think was when we were working with you, he decided that was his summer holiday fund and a models fund.
And what did he do with the money, actually?
Yeah, I think there was a famous actress he took to Hawaii for a photo shoot, which was about £50,000 of it. He rented the castle that was in James Bond for a summer holiday, and he filled his lift with sassicaia.
And what is sassicaia?
Sassicaia is a fine Tuscan wine, a super Tuscan, about 350 a bottle at the moment.
And then what happened next?
Well, and then we didn't have the money to pay the deposit for the bill, so we came to you.
Yeah, and who got the blame?
I got the blame. I got the blame for mismanaging, for not having arranged enough money to pay for the deposit and the summer. I should have known that there were summer expenses as well as construction expenses that were required of the development capital that I raised.
Do you think with certain high net worth individuals, when you do a PMS report, you need to have the sort of construction line items and then a lifestyle line items just to make sure you've got just enough liquidity to handle the client's degenerate ways? With
the last client I referred to you, I had to make sure that there was enough money to pay for their lifestyle as well as their development, because sometimes you come up with a client who has inherited a lot of money, but the money is all in real estate.
Yeah.
And if they want it, and you obviously want the best for them, so they don't want to get rid of the real estate because that's their source of income, their last lifeline. So they want you to restructure their portfolio that they can make money. But whilst you're doing that, you normally have to give them some money to live off.
Yeah.
And so predicting how much money they actually need to live off versus what they tell you is a very difficult thing to organise. And so sometimes you'll think, okay, they need, if I get them an income of 50,000 a month, that should be enough to cover all their expenses. And then suddenly it's gone within a week because they've had a spending spree. And you have to sort of reassess and go, okay, I need to drip feed this money in, and keep the building fund separate, and then drip feed in the money to pay for the lifestyle.
Yeah, it's like you have to ration it because to protect them from themselves in many ways.
Exactly, and you end up with some difficult conversations, some fallouts. I mean, they don't want to be controlled by you. You don't want to control them. But they're hiring you to act in their best interests, and you need to. So it's a difficult conversation to have, and sometimes it's it's tough, and you're very it's very intimate.
And very predictably, in the case of that particular client, they, the project ran into difficulty because they didn't have enough money to pay their construction team. And so everything, you end up with construction project delays and everyone involved suffers as a result.
Yeah, I think with that one, there were multiple things that went wrong. It was sort of an amalgamation of lots of different problems.
Yeah.
One was cash flow. The other was them spending money out of their cash flow requirement. It was drawdowns happening on time. It was all sorts of problems that just sort of amalgamated, and then they were on painkillers. I'm not sure if you remember. They were on quite a lot of painkillers at the time, and their decision making process was just out of the window. And so
because they're not lucid enough to
lucid enough to make good choices. And so whilst they're rational, you can have good conversations with them, but when they're not making good choices, suddenly those conversations become far more difficult.
Yeah. And I guess your relationship with them will suffer as a consequence of that.
Yeah, a lot of the times, sometimes it's made stronger. Sometimes you deal with a client and you go through the rough with them, and that's it. It's a huge bond. I've had many clients come over for Christmas dinner, after deals are done, and they're part of the family.
Yeah.
And then you have some where they sort of, I think they'll still come back at some point anyway. But I think you have some where sort of the lost children,
Yeah.
But I think most of my clients have come, even if they've fallen out with me temporarily, have come back and said, we know what happened.
Yeah.
And could you please?
Yeah, they realise that you're only trying to help ultimately, right?
Yeah, exactly, and they come back.
Their best interests at heart.
Yeah, I think often they'll come back.
This episode was sponsored by Avamore Capital. In property finance, you want specialists who understand development, refurbishment, part-completed projects, and bridging deals inside out. Avamore Capital knows construction timelines, cost pressures, and what it takes to structure deals through market changes. Deep expertise, not surface knowledge. Solutions-led thinking based on what actually happens on site. When you're working with Avamore, you're working with people who get it. Learn more at avamorecapital.com.
And I think in the case of that particular client, you had some aspirations for sort of, I suppose, a wellness destination.
Yes.
That you were looking to help develop for them.
Yeah, we had a deal with this client. It was sort of, we would build them some houses on the land, get them an income, get them stable, and then in return they'd give me some land to build a members club, which would have been fantastic. It was a perfect location for it. Most beautiful site I've seen in a long time. But yeah, when the relationship fell apart, you sort of realise, well, even if I could keep the site, is this a partner that I want? Are they a stable enough partner for this business? And they definitely weren't. So
I think that's the danger, isn't it? With any sort of partnership, you need the partner to be predictable and
Absolutely.
predictable in a stable or positive way. Not someone who's kind of constantly shifting sands. I've got a friend and former colleague who's just entered into a recent partnership, and and is experiencing major trust issues with their partner in that venture, and fundamentally that is it means, I think it is really unsettling. And it's very hard, I think, to move anything forward with someone when you don't have that trust in place.
You're dealing with our industry is very human. You're dealing with a lot of pressure, and so those human aspects tend to be exaggerated.
Yeah,
people will lose their temper. People will get upset, get nervous, get scared. So you've got to sort of be forgiving of somebody's human nature. And then it's, how forgiving am I?
Yeah.
What's reasonable? What can be forgiven? What's a personality trait versus what's just under a lot of pressure? Can this be hedged against? How can I protect myself against this personality trait? It's a complex thing to sort of assess, and I don't think I've got it quite.
Do you think you think that because the people you deal with a lot of the time are high net worth individuals, they feel that they have this sense of entitlement to be more irrational and more difficult? You know, they have that sort of do you think that they feel a bit more entitled to be like that and they can get away with it more than the average person?
No more than anyone else. I mean, I think you get people who feel entitled or feel entitled in all wealth classes.
Yeah.
People feel entitled to benefits, people feel entitled to decent salary, people feel entitled to privilege. I think it's just a...
You're talking about Gen Zs right now, are you?
No, but you just get a lot of entitlement everywhere. So I don't think that's necessarily a characteristic of a high net worth. Not at all.
No.
I think it's just a personality trait. But you're right in that the way it expresses itself is different with ultra high net worth because they feel entitled to something.
There's a slight haughtiness to them, do you think? Or
no, I mean, completely depends. If they've been sports, if somebody's been sports since they were a kid, then they're just used to it. They don't know any better, and they just it's sort of like it's almost like dealing with a child who just isn't used to things going their way. Sometimes, it's somebody who feels entitled or insecure and pushing their weight around. But I mean, it's a very individual thing.
And what have you found as the sort of strategies and tactics to navigate that best?
Just to be upfront. Don't be scared. Don't be bullied by what you think their reaction is going to be. Just always be upfront, honest, and tell the facts like they are, and record it. So you've got a record. So you've got a recording of the facts and the conversations, and then people come around, because if they're having a bad day or they're having overreaction, they'll come back to reality and they'll say, sorry. But I think that's the main thing, is just not to let it deter you or change your behaviour. Just to stay steadfast in how you deal with things. Yeah.
Well, I think it's quite interesting. We talk to, we're doing a lot of work with our sales team at Avamore. We've grown it a lot over the last few months, and so we're just looking at how sales team operates and how they progress, and we're looking at who's doing things well and looking at who has room for improvement. And so there's one absolute standout performer in the sales team who and but I won't mention him on camera because his head's big enough as it is. May have interviewed him, so you'll probably be able to figure it out. And I think that one of the things that has been quite clear that is ineffective is people pleasing from a sales perspective. Because the thing about people pleasing is that whilst people kind of can latch onto people pleasers, ultimately when you're talking about finance, trust is so important. And I think ultimately, if you're a people pleaser, you're telling people what they want to hear, but not what they need to hear. And I think you're more instinctively going to trust someone who tells you what you need to hear, because that's the truth, than someone who tells you what you want to hear, and what they're telling you probably isn't entirely the truth. I mean, where do you stand on that? It sounds to me like that's kind of been part of your ethos.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be brutally honest with people. Otherwise, if you're trying to tell people what they want to hear, it's never going to go well in the end, because the truth will come out, or the facts will come out, just emerge. I think one thing I find difficult dealing with BDMs or dealing with lenders, when you're acting on behalf of a client and you buy in, you've done your assessment of the project yourself and you buy into it, and you'll push forward your view of the facts as they are, as you see it. And the BDM will come back and say, well, of course you're saying that, you want to get the loan over so you can get paid. And the bank have this sort of pessimistic view of, we've got to knock this back a bit. We've got to sort of look on this with scrutiny, because the introducer wants to get paid on this. And so they're going to be optimistic. We have to be pessimistic. And I find that difficult sometimes, in that if you are brutally honest with stuff and you do present it, you will still get looked at like it has to get knocked down a bit. Yeah. So dealing with that in a way that sort of, you can't be optimistic, because it's not, you're going to get a reputation of being optimistic and people downvalue stuff. But if you go in as things are, there won't be much room to move. And the lenders, the BDMs might expect some movement, and you won't have the room for it. So then you'll have some fights. So then you've got to sort of be prepared to argue with people and say, when we told you we thought it was this price, it really was that price. And when we said this, we really meant it, and we won't move from that. Or if we move from it, it's not by the margin you expect.
Yeah, without wanting to sort of overly talk up our own process, because I'm sure there's lots of people yawning now. We'll start yawning and switching channels. But the approach that we've elected to take, which we've actually found very successful over the last year since Greg and Jacob took over the day-to-day operations of the business, is at the point of, any BDM can send out a dip, right? And that dip isn't necessarily is not necessarily credit backed. A lot of BDMs, including people who used to work for us as well, will rush out a set of terms or try and get the client committed to spending upwards of 10 grand on DD cost, on lender DD costs. At which point the client feels trapped with that particular lender, and then the deal goes to credit and the goalposts get moved. Our approach has been very much for the most part, and that's why we've seen once we send out set of heads of terms, those heads of terms are credit backed, and it's only if something comes out of the DD reports themselves that should be getting in the way of the deal happening. Especially because we're doing our own internal valuations. We're already doing our own build cost assessments. Does that client's build cost estimation pass the sniff test? Does the client's GDV? So put it this way, I don't expect that the next time we look at a deal together, I don't expect you to be having a fight with your BDM or the credit team, 2/3 of the way down the line of a transaction, because ultimately we should already have bought into the GDVs that your client is proposing. We shouldn't have too much of a doubt about the build costs, because you're building a high-end unit, it's going to have to cost however many hundreds of pounds a square foot to do the works and blah blah. There shouldn't be too many surprises. And I think in Q4 of 2025, I think 80% of all the deals that we had clients accepted our HOTS offer actually completed, and that's it's a really high ratio, and it's a testament to the fact that we're not putting, when we issue a set of HOTS, we're not wasting people's time. But fundamentally, there are other lenders will have different approaches to how they want to operate, and it's sort of that kind of bid high and then let the valuation do the work, or let the we've spotted this in the client's credit report and we're going to have to knock however much off the offer. Yeah. Does that sound familiar?
Well, it does. Yeah. I mean, it's just
depressingly familiar.
Just the industry. I have to say, one of my fondest memories was our first deal together. Yeah. And because you were so hands-on, it was one of the first deals you were lending on that was quite large. And you came to site, you met the client, you took time to understand the development, you took time to understand what's happening, you took time to understand the GDV, and you were really involved from sort of beginning to end. And I think when you have a lender who, say a new BDM, who has the level of knowledge that you do, or the level of involvement, it makes things so much easier, because you can just say, okay, this is it, scrutinize it, and then let's talk about it.
Well, we talk about the relationship manager that's been looking after you the last however long. What I'd speak to about him is that he understands the company's credit appetite first and foremost, and if you understand the credit appetite and what's going to get through credit, you're avoiding surprises. And I think unfortunately, me originating and underwriting deals is not a luxury I can offer to the vast majority of people that engage with the company these days. I mean, it's ironic actually that with that transaction, obviously after we were refinanced away, I don't know if you recall, but we got the valuation report in, and the valuation was at something crazy like 4 million quid. And I looked at the valuer's comps and I said, look, you're using you're using comps for Marylebone or you're using comps for Mayfair. I said, this is not Marylebone or Mayfair. I'd like you to knock the valuation back to this level, but just knock it back to that level because that's what it's worth. By the way, we'll still do the deal at the leverage that you're at, but like we're not. Anyway, I think the client managed to get the valuer, some other valuer, to come in at the original 4 million when they refinanced us out, and then the client, obviously, when the sort of the game of musical chairs stopped, and he ran out of lenders, that he could go tap up for financing on it, and he went and the asset got put into receivership, and it sold at auction for almost exactly what I told the values of going at. No? Was it 3? I think it was 3.2 or something like that. 3.1, 3.2, something like that. Yeah. A very sad end to the client's relationship with the property, but interesting. It was. I don't know why. I'm quite sad, but I took a great level of personal satisfaction that my valuation was bang on the nose. The circumstances not so much. But
he had 3 valuations on that one, if I remember correctly. He had CBRE, Knight Frank, and Savills, and I won't tell you which one came in where, but you had one come in at 3, one come in at 3.5, and one come in at 4. And then when he was selling, he had 2 agents competing. One told him 4 and one told him 4.25. And I think it was that. It was being misled about price, being catered to.
Yeah.
This was sort of part of his downfall because he thought I have way more money available than I do. And so the choices he was making was far more relaxed. I've got £1 million on top of this that I can play with. Once I sell it, I can do whatever I want. I can do. And the reality, if you're telling him, you don't have that much money. You have this much money.
Yeah.
You need to be making different choices. You need to be far more careful. And it's a difficult thing to have when you've got agents trying to get a fee on it and telling him inflated prices.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I think ultimately, like with a lot of people, there's a strong case of willful blindness.
Absolutely.
And it's you're doing the best job you can do as an advisor. Like at the end of the day, whether you're a broker or whether you classify yourself as a broker or as a project manager, you're ultimately first and foremost a trusted advisor for these people. And you're trying to give them the best advice you can. But the sad reality is that it's only worth to them what they're willing to actually receive and process.
Yes.
And, we all have instances where we hear a message, but we'll cherry pick the things that we want to hear from that message, and not the harsh realities that you take the sugar, but not the actual medicine.
Yeah. We have. With most of the clients I've dealt with, it's been the opposite, but you have one or two. I mean, normally the memorable ones.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like we talked about the ones. It's the same with everyone as well. So the ones that repay without fuss, you don't remember them, right?
No.
We're doing a deal at the moment with a client, and it's a decent sized deal. They said, "Oh yeah, but this was the guy you did the deal with in." It was like one of the few deals that we managed to do like a deal every month during lockdown, when the market was completely dead, the funding market was dead. We just we used our own family capital or other high net worths that collaborated with us at the time. It's like, do you remember? I was like, they mentioned the name. He said, do you remember him? I was like, and they said, no, that was the COVID deal and the chapel, Methodist chapel. I was like, oh, that guy, yeah. And of course, because he performed beautifully, you're like, oh,
yeah,
and that's why the name doesn't stick out. But there's a good 24 names that are characters whose names you'll never forget. It's all
the client, the first client that we're talking about. I phoned up one of the guys I used to work with on the deal, Ben Kurt. He was at CBRE, and Ben just said, I'm getting PTSD. what do you do? Please don't. I've forgotten his name and I've recovered. I had to go and see a psychiatrist for months about that. I think he got the brunt of he got the brunt of that one.
Yeah, I guess that's part and parcel of doing business, right? The vast majority of clients and vast majority of people in business are straightforward, and they just want to get on. And then And then there's always that sort of handful of outliers that are, that are, shall we say, well, they're characters, and that's and it comes with the territory.
I mean, it puts an awful lot of stress on you. As if you're a broker or a bank, it puts a lot of stress on us. But it adds a lot of colour to what we do, and so maybe I would like to keep those clients because they do add so much colour. They are such characters, and you have such stories to tell afterwards. But I just maybe limit limit it somehow, limit the exposure.
Yes, or most importantly, make sure you're getting paid no matter what.
Yes, yeah, that's a difficult one. From my end, from your end, it's easier, I suppose, because you have a charge over the property.
I think a lot of the time it's not always. It's actually sometimes it's that part of it's getting to the completion, because obviously once you've completed, then you're right, we got the charge and we got some degree of protection. I mean, you say that though. We had like one guy, we did a loan with him when he acquired the property. He'd managed to secure the property. It was in South London. He managed to secure the property for like a really good price, and so the vendor, he'd exchanged, and the vendor wouldn't complete because the vendor realised that they'd agreed to sell it for too little. So he had to go to court to get it completed anyway. So we helped him acquire the property. And then he was actually performing quite well, and he he took us out, refinanced us, and then he approached me, sort of, just after the first lockdown. He said, "Look, I've been put into receivership by well-known North London bridger who was known for sort of sharpish practices." And I said, okay. I said, fine, we'll lend you this much, but we said, look, you're quite geared, so we're going to need you to start doing the work around getting your buy-to-let sorted anyway. And he was just such a basket case that he turned into a real basket case. And he said, and we kept helping him, kept trying to help him. Look, you need to get this sorted. This is going to get a problem. And I said, look, there's going to be a point where because this is, the loan is owned by a funder, and once you get to a certain point with them, I'm not, there's only going to be so much I can do for you, and it will be out of my hands. And eventually it became out of our hands. Then we had to appoint receiver. During the process of but before receiver is appointed, he basically agreed to let the property out to some people who, shall we say, that they decided to do a mini agriculture project, shall we say. And in the process of doing that mini agriculture project, they did some damage to the property. And so a building that should have sold for about 1.1 million ended up selling at auction for 850, 900 grand. It's fine. Principal, interest, all of that was recovered. We had to write off a bit of default interest. But it just goes to show that, even if you are the first charge, it doesn't automatically guarantee you
get your money back.
100% coverage.
Yeah. I've seen some sharp practices not by you, but by another lender, where they had sort of offered a client a branch, a way out, but secured it against the client's other assets, and knowing that they had the client's assets sort of held, when the property sold, rather than paying the agents or the advisors, the lender said to the client, if you give me back all the money, then I'll give you back your assets. And if you don't, then you pay the other consultants their share, their fees. Then we'll hold on to the assets until you can repay us with interest. And I think that was the sharpest practice I've seen in the industry so far. I think it's working at the moment is quite nice because the operators are shrinking. Who's willing to develop, who's willing to lend, is shrunk a bit. And it means people you're left with sort of people who are really tenacious and know what they're doing, like are confident in their own ability. Because anyone who's got doubts in their ability now is sort of being a bit cautious. Yeah. Which is nice. So it means it's sort of...
It's interesting that you say that, actually. Because I would have thought you'd probably want it to be you'd want the maximum number of clients, or is it that, do you think that because the people, it's now, do you think there are fewer time wasters as a consequence of that?
There are fewer time wasters. The stuff I see now is I'm getting stuff I would never see before, like £100 million requirements for a single house, for a single building, and you just think, okay, this is stuff that I wouldn't have seen before. I'm giving an opportunity now because I'm capable. And sort of the previous operators have gone out of business or aren't trusted anymore because they put people in situations where they've got them in trouble. So you're seeing sort of an ability to sort of grow now if you've been performing very well, which I personally like.
Yeah. So what happened? Well, you have like these sort of fly-by-night contractors, project managers. I can think of one of two by name, and they traditionally would pair up with a high net worth family to do a project, and they've not, they've sort of just taken a bit of a punt really, and taken a nice juicy DM fee, and then they've scarpered when it all went, it all went wrong.
Exactly that. Or lenders sort of promising, or development partners promising they could get a deal over the line and the value stack, doing some sort of initial reports, and then sort of just stagnating and not pushing it forwards. And the developer eventually says, is this deal happening or not? Is this real or not? Will somebody actually lend on it or not? And sort of it comes across my desk and I have to assess the GDVs and timelines, which is why Academy is so great, because I can just pass it over to Ben and say, Ben, what's the build cost on this? And Mandy, how long will this take? And how is this? Because
then you can turn around and go, listen, I've had the numbers come back.
Yeah.
Right? It's not viable. Let's not waste our time on this.
Exactly that. It's horrible for me sometimes, because often reality is not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And so you'll go to the team and they'll say, actually, it's not viable. And okay, well, I won't waste any more time on this. It kills your dream early on too. You sort of dream about getting this huge commission that's not coming in. But when it works, it's fantastic, because you can fully move forwards knowing we have a way to make this work. So that's nice.
Yeah. I mean, I think, do you think that now I'd say now we're sort of in our sort of the middle parts of our careers, right? Or maybe starting the second half of our careers, dare I say it. You start to become, do you feel like you're becoming a bit more, not aware of your mortality per se, but like you're just less inclined to sort of waste time speculating and suffering fools?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The people I deal with now are just people I've dealt with for a long time. If I start to deal with somebody new, it takes a while to build that trust or to build that relationship, longer than it would have done when I was younger. When I was younger, you go have a couple of beers to somebody, you'd sort of build up some trust, a repertoire, and be willing to take a punt on them the next deal you have.
Yeah.
Whereas now you just sort of think, if somebody's there are some new lenders that have come on the market who I think have legs, but you still tend to go to the old and trusteds and just say, these people I know can do the deal. I know this team will do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I've spoken about it before, but fundamentally, I used to get frustrated as to why we weren't able to secure deals where maybe we had the best terms, and ultimately it's that fear of the unknown, and brokers and clients are willing to pay a little bit more or take a little bit less leverage, because if they know that the person that's meant to be giving them the money is actually going to deliver and perform. So yeah, I do understand that.
It's the post drawdown that's the issue. I'm not sure if it's a first time developer, maybe they don't understand how problematic that can be. But if it's an experienced developer and they understand post drawdown how that team is going to be run, if you're trying to access that market, you're trying to steal that client from a bank who's already operated well with them.
Yeah,
your terms are better. You really have to be sort of putting your post drawdown team up front with your BDM. They need to be, this is who's going to be managing your deal afterwards. You're in competent hands. Don't worry, they're not going to cause problems. I think that's important, that they see who they're going to be dealing with once the loan's happened.
Yeah, that's interesting. So actually putting forward your sort of loan management servicing teams as part of the sales, or almost sending them out sometimes to see clients, new clients, as part of the sort of underwriting process is almost, kind of is a bit of a speed date for both sides, right?
Definitely in situations where you've got competition on a loan where the person's borrowed from somebody else before and your terms are sort of marginally cheaper because you're trying to get the client, but not enough that would dissuade them. In that situation, definitely send out your post drawdown team.
Yeah. Because
if they're strong and they're competent, then you can sort of alleviate those worries. I've had a deal this month, and it was on a large project. It was a 9 million GDV on a single flat, and then upstairs another 5 million GDV on another flat. The person was buying both, lease extending and developing them. And the lenders that I put them with were fantastic, brilliant team, brilliant post drawdown team. But the lenders they borrowed from before, they'd worked with on a project, they'd had some teething problems. And then the person that they had problems with got fired, they got replaced with somebody else. And their new team at this lender was sort of almost custom built. They'd sort of caused enough issues whilst they're with that lender to get the team exactly as they wanted. And so they're like, well, I've just spent a year building this post drawdown team with this lender, and they're only a couple of points above your lender. So I don't see the point, I don't see why I should move, or it's precarious for me to move. And I want to move. I want to have another lender, but on a project that's less difficult, that there are less moving parts.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, but there are always going to be moving parts. On this type of, if it wasn't complex, there wouldn't be money in it.
Yeah, totally. And I think clients are generally right, I think, to have a multitude of lending relationships.
Yes.
But yeah, it's finding that right one to introduce them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're just going to start our sort of wind down now. But what does the future hold for you and for Academy? Like, what your kind of goals and aspirations over the next few years? Where do you see business and life taking you?
I want to grow the fund monitoring, the monitoring surveying arm of Academy, because I think it's a regular income in my industry, in the ultra high net worth resi and side of it. I don't think there are enough specialists that really understand how it works. And I think with Ben on board and with my guidance, I think that could be a very special product, to have fund monitors that really understand how it works and understand what sort of clients they're dealing with and what kind of problems they're going to come up against and how to diplomatically solve those problems without rocking the boat. And you've got sort of, I think that's where I want that to go. And then
it's definitely an underserved market.
It is.
Yeah, because we're still looking at our panel because and unfortunately it's the same names that keep coming up over and over again. So yeah, if you can crack that, you know where we are.
And then I think just continuing to grow the loan book on the ultra high net worth resis, and then move into industrial loans is where I see things going. So once I've built the MQS department and it's up and running properly, then sort of focus on the large resi loans because it's what I'm known for, and then move over into industrial a bit.
Nice.
Like a new challenge.
Nice. Well, no, we've got to have extra strings to our bows. So.
What about Avonmore sort of? What's your lending appetite looking like moving forward?
Well, we remain very much open for business. I think we're targeting £250 million of lending or transactions in the financial year starting in April. So there's a big push to build that pipeline up. Going to be very focused on the development side of things, particularly sort of very liquid 1 to 9 unit type schemes. Particularly houses, apartments will be very much focused with a rental exit or a rental and a refi exit, and then looking at adjacent sectors like PBSA. Despite my commercial property background, I'm not sure that commercial is an area that we'll probably be that focused on, although maybe the semi-commercial stuff, because we know that there's quite good liquidity there. So shops with uppers and things like that, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, no, and I think we're very keen, very open to do business. We're looking a couple of years ahead now. Also, at some of the funding relationships we're looking to develop will enable us to do 400 or 500 million. We've invested very heavily in the tech, so as I said to you off camera, it's frustrating because we really want to grow and develop. And there's an element of impatience, but I think that if we keep putting one foot in front of the other in the right direction, then 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we're gonna we'll look back going, wow, that was really exciting.
Yeah, it passes so quickly when you're working in the right direction. The time passes so quickly. Yeah, completely. And you look back and go, wow, what? Yeah. And by the way, it can be both the same in the other direction, right? Which is we had this great thing, and we've seen it, and we had this great thing, and actually it's kind of gone a bit to seed now, and we have to it's taken us time to kind of get back to where we are now.
So yeah, we're, current management team, fantastic, and they have a lot of support from us, from Zahara and myself. So yeah, just final question from me, and it's a closing tradition. But if you were going to give some advice to your younger self, what would you say and why?
It would be if you're going to go into something, whatever the industry, whatever the job, to really go into it, not be afraid to lose some of the life that you could live by doing it. So don't be afraid of missing out on social activities or friends or girlfriends. Just when you're starting in those first few years, just really throw yourself in, because that's when you build the core, that's when you build the base, and that's what people remember you for. And then afterwards, if you can relax a bit. But at the beginning, just don't be afraid to throw yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, something I think I certainly lived that myself. So didn't have much of a 20s, I don't think so. No, nice. Ashley, it's been amazing to see you, because I haven't seen you for a couple of years, and we always get on very well when we see each other. If people want to reach out and get a hold of you and get in touch, what's the best way to reach out to you? And if you got socials or anything like that you want to promote?
Of course, I have a LinkedIn, Ashley James Hammond, or you can reach me at Academy. So it's ashley@academy.eu.uk, or just call Academy Consulting in Sevenoaks.
Nice,
it's a fantastic team.
Nice. Well, it's been great having you on. Thanks very much. Thank you to our audience, to our viewers on YouTube and X, and to our listeners on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and wherever else you get your content. I've been your host, Michael Dean. You can find me on the internet at property_funder. Thanks, as always, to Avamore Capital for their continued support and sponsorship of the podcast. Thank you to Davina and Versta, and we'll talk to you again on the next one. Thanks, and bye-bye.